Hey everyone, thanks so much for joining us. I'm Julie. I'm one of the market success directors here at Ojo. We're so happy to have you with us. We're waiting for everybody to join us right now. So while we wait, if you don't mind, could you drop in chat where you're from so we can see where everybody is joining us from today? I think we're expecting a huge group, so I'm super excited. Oh, we've got some Toronto, Austin representing, Los
I saw
Angeles.
Canadian and St. John. That's
Yeah,
a good thing. That's
we
great.
got a few. We got a few. Yeah, Nevada, Austin, Las Vegas, Massachusetts. All right, Miami, Florida. Cool. Okay, well, lots of people joining very quickly. So I want to go ahead and get started. We want to have plenty of time with this amazing panel of speakers that we have today. And in case you just joined, I'm Julie Franklin. I'm one of the market success directors here at Ojo. Today, we are bringing together our US and Canadian partners for a really special masterclass to celebrate women leaders in real estate. And we are so fortunate to have this accomplished group of women and industry leaders here joining us. I know I'm personally really excited about it. So get ready to learn from the best, and be sure to prepare your questions for us for the Q&A that's going to happen at the end. We're going to save about 10 to 15 minutes. So if you do have questions, please drop them in the Q&A portion down at the bottom of your Zoom screen and not in the chat. We're not going to be monitoring the chat for questions. So I could probably spend the whole hour listing out the accomplishments of these incredible panelists, but I'm going to go ahead and get started and introduce them to you. So first up, we have Spring Benson. Spring runs one of the top producing real estate teams in Utah. They sold almost 600 homes in 2022, positioning them to become one of the top teams in the country. She also has some other ancillary ventures, like owning a title company, her own real estate coaching company, Spring Bee Coaching. She's a wife, she's a mom, she's a mentor, and with all of her free time, she does crazy stuff like this Everest challenge where you climb Snow Basin 13 times in 36 hours. Yeah, wow. So sounds incredible, but no thank you. Next, we have Kathleen Black joining us. Kathleen is a globally recognized mindset and performance expert, two-time best-selling author, highly sought after as a speaker and owner of her own consulting firm, Kathleen Black Coaching and Consulting. She's an award-winning business leader, having been the recipient of the iconic Leaders Creating a Better World for All award, and was named one of the top 25 women driving the future of real estate. And if that wasn't enough, she also inspired a full-time documentary titled The Relentless One. So many of you will recognize our next panelist, Elena Cardone. She is a literal model and an example of women doing it all. Wife, mother, mentor to hundreds of women, best-selling author of Build an Empire, How to Have It All. She's an event producer for events such as 10X Ladies, Build an Empire Mastermind, and others. She's a highly sought after public speaker. Her most recent endeavor has been to partner with eXp, with her sight set on building the largest real estate team across the globe and help others create generational wealth through real estate. Next, Nikki Miller is the founder and CEO of the Lead Syndicate, a first of its kind leverage platform exclusively optimized for individual real estate agents operating in over 125 locations across 24 states. Her passion for real estate agent success is evidenced in everything she touches, from the ideation of the Lead Syndicate to the countless free resources that she provides to agents. So she also can be seen at many events where she will be training throughout the year. Michelle Reese was named one of the top 50 women in Canadian real estate, according to the Real Estate Professional magazine. She is the CEO of Aligned Academy, the broker owner of Royal LePage Connect Realty. With over the last 25 years, she has helped thousands of agents and small businesses grow their business. Her mission is to help women create the freedom, fulfillment, and financial success that they desire through self-discovery, mindset, and brain-based strategies. And moderating today's panel is our very own Natalka Falcomer, who is the Chief Real Estate Officer for Ojo Canada. Prior to joining Ojo, she played a key role in building a luxury brokerage, a private equity firm in the medical space, and she launched and then sold her own law firm. She was the founder and host of the popular TV show Toronto Speaks Legal Advice. She was twice named one of Canada's top elite women real estate agents and also served as the director of the Real Estate Institute of Canada. She currently serves as a board member and chair on the Ontario Trillium Foundation and is an advisor with the National Association of Realtors PropTech Venture Organization. So, as I said, an amazing group of women. Get ready. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to you, Natalka, to kick things off.
Awesome. Thank you. And thank you to everyone who has joined us today. This is going to be a panel that is packed with wisdom. So having said that, I'm going to zip it and dive right into the questions because there's a lot that we can learn from the women here today. So the first question will be for all of you. So pay attention. When you began your career many years ago, did you imagine that you would be where you are today? As you chew on that question, the reason why I'm asking that is very often all of us look at women such as yourselves who have it made. You seem to have it all together. And it appears that it's likely that you knew where you were going, you had no obstacles getting in your way, and you were able to execute on that vision. So starting with Michelle, I'm going to throw this question to you first.
Throw me in the hot seat. Oh my gosh. Okay. Did I ever imagine I'd be where I am? Absolutely not. I say that with such humble honesty. I really, when I started out in the real estate industry when I was very, very young. And I happened to evolve in the industry through family business. But I tried my very best not to be in the industry. I tried to get into the teaching and I did all of that, but there was always something that brought me back. But did I ever imagine I would be operating my own company, 2 companies and coaching women in business? No, I actually didn't think that I fit that mold of what a CEO should look like and be like. So here I am.
Well, that's interesting. I want to dig into afterwards as to the imposter syndrome that I think is creeping up there. A lot of us have that. Elena, given that you were a model, an actress, did you think for sure I'm going to end up in the real estate business? How did you land here?
Well, absolutely not. I thought my life was going to go in that direction. I ended up here, honestly, because I hooked up with my husband, Grant Cardone, many years ago. We got married in 2004. 2008, the economy collapsed. The only thing that saved us literally from going belly up was the fact that my husband had invested prior to our marriage in real estate. And it was that real estate holdings, that asset, multifamily that kept us afloat. And then we realized how valuable that asset truly is. So a couple of years ago, I never really ever thought I was going to venture into the real estate world at all on this side of things, other than being an investor. But in 2008, my husband and Glenn Sanford, the founder of EXP, hooked up in order for them to consummate this deal where they'd have access to Grant's training. Grant's not a realtor. I raised my hand as the good supporting wife saying, okay, I'll get the real estate license so you two can do the deal. Well, once I found out about the model of EXP and how women and men, but mostly women, that's where I have my passion for, right? Could actually have the opportunity to create wealth through real estate with not just their earned income, but in the forms of stocks and in the forms of this revenue share thing. That's when I really hunkered down and said, let me figure this thing out and let me figure out how to support all these other people inside the organization to build their empires, because I know how much wealth can actually be created through real estate. So that's how I ended up here. And I haven't looked back. I've really enjoyed the process. It's not an easy to be in, but it is very rewarding. So absolutely not. I didn't think I would be here.
Thank you, Elena, for sharing that. And it seems that the lesson to be learned there is to take the opportunities and to put up your hand, as opposed to saying, that sounds too difficult. That sounds like it's out of my wheelhouse. Forget it. Putting up your hand is where you can end up having an amazing career path. Thank you so much.
Well, yeah, the number one rule to success, always show up. So I'm glad you saw that. Thank you.
Absolutely. Kathleen, over to you.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I think just like Michelle and Elena, I definitely did not see myself in this. And to be honest, I resisted it. I mean, with my ex-husband, we were in investment properties and I was doing sweat equity. I had little kids. I was dealing with tenants and leases. And I was just like, I don't need another job. And in the end, I did get my license. Thank goodness I was pushed. Real estate really changed my life, saved my life. That's the truth of it. And thank goodness I was pushed. But as soon as I got into real estate, it put a lot of strain on my marriage. And I ended up going into the start of a very messy separation and divorce. And I found myself not being the breadwinner with 2 kids under 5. And, you know, I've got to say, like, I wasn't sitting there going, I want to be a top 1% producer in real estate. I was saying, you know, how am I going to feed my kids? Like, how am I going to pay rent? How am I going to have a place to live? Let alone, how am I going to have the time to cook it and clean up after it and make sure they're actually eating it? Right. But I had to make a choice. And you know what? I bet on myself because that's an option in real estate. And at the end of that first year, I sold 44 homes. I was a top 1% producer. I'm really proud of it. But did I think it was going to happen, let alone now coaching thousands of people? No, it wasn't even in my wildest dreams yet.
I see Elena clapping Michelle as well, because I know, Michelle, your mom had a similar story about like necessity pushing her up against the wall and saying, I got to get this done. And it's incredible. You hear this often with successful entrepreneurs and people generally, is that when you feel like you have no option, you make it work. You make it work. And that's a great lesson there. Thank you, Kathleen. Nikki, you're next, and then Spring.
I'll answer this a little bit differently. I don't think I could have identified exactly what I was going to do, but I was very clear early on in my career, the woman that I wanted to be. And I knew the impact that I wanted to have on people. I knew the type of business that I was capable of creating. And I knew the world that I wanted to create around me, for myself, for my family, and for, you know, anyone that I was lucky enough to be in business with. So could I have named exactly what I do now? Probably not. And I did have a clear idea of who I wanted to be in this life, and then sort of built a plan to go and become that, right? And learned what I needed to learn, and got into the spaces I needed to get into, and got the mentors that I needed to have in order to become that person who would be capable of building, you know, what I'm now in the process of building. But I do love what you said earlier, Natalka, is that often in that process, we think that like when we start building big businesses, the skies open up one day and there are no more obstacles. Like we just figure out the way and we don't have to face any obstacles anymore and everything's really easy. And I will say the evolution that I don't think I ever would have been able to name early on, that I finally got to, is that the obstacles never go away. And in fact, the obstacles are the way. Like my business was created because of the obstacles I faced as an individual agent, and finally looked up one day and said, I bet other individual agents are facing this too. I wonder if I could help them. So it sort of became this evolution for me that I leaned into the obstacles to allow them to guide me to become the person I needed to become, to find the solutions I needed to find, and build what I needed to build in order to help other people in that process too.
Absolutely. And, you know, that probably resonates with a lot of people right now, given what's happening within the real estate industry. It's changing, it's fluctuating, it's getting more difficult to get buyers in, it's getting more difficult to get a seller in. To lean into like, to not walk away and say, well, you know, it's too hard, that would be a mistake. What I'm seeing with all of you on this panel, and what I know about all of you in this panel, is that there are problems and you run towards those problems, but you of course run to them with a solution. Awesome. Thank you, Nikki. Spring, over to you.
Yeah, so absolutely not. I got married very young, at 21 years old, 22 years old. And I got my real estate license because I was going to be a stay-at-home mom and buy a few investment properties with my husband. And it looked super easy and kind of glamorous. And then one day we were at lunch, and I lived in a resort community, and the golf course was hiring somebody to work and sell their properties. And it was brought up that I had my license, and they were like, do you want to apply? And I thought instantly, no, like there's no way. And my husband was like, she'd be perfect for it. And I just remember kicking him under the table, like, what are you doing? What are you getting me into? But I got the job, and I'm so fortunate because it ended up creating an environment that was very structured. You had goals, you had to hit quota, all those things. And so it started my real estate career on the right path. From there, I was fortunate enough to just keep on growing and scaling. And then when 2008, 2009 hit, that developer went bankrupt. And that was when I had to make a decision. So learning to pivot and go into that short sale market. And that's when I had the opportunity to start building a team. And so to what Nikki was saying, at that point, I got very clear on what I wanted and hired the right coaches and the opportunities. But originally starting out, absolutely not. I had the goal to be a mom, and which I think is a harder job, honestly, and buy a few properties here or there. So
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that. And again, once again, it's showing up. Elena, as you said, just having to show up is a big piece of it. Then also continuing to execute, doing the work, right, is what gets you there. This next question has to do with the men that we come across in our careers. And this question will be for Spring and Elena as well. Elena, I'll start with you. Do you ever experience resistance when you are leading men, or have you? And if so, how do you manage that?
I really don't. Anna, I've been asked this question a lot. So obviously it's real to some people that they experience this. For me, I always have the mission, where we're going, the targets in place. I respect men in the workplace. I show up in a professional atmosphere. I don't disrespect my male counterparts, but I am very demanding of the competency level that I expect, because I expect it of myself. I have the stats to prove, and where I've earned my right and my say, and where I don't, I will go to somebody for advice. I never try to pretend I know more, be more, whatever, but I have this ability to be able to get and really lead a team so that people around me are comfortable with the culture and the atmosphere and the guidelines with which we operate. And so really, the people that don't fit inside that culture and understand like what we are working for is not about an ego. It's about what is the project's gain, what is the function, what is the benefit that we want to provide a service of value to the recipient. And if you're not on board with that and you can't handle toughness, like I'm trying to win the Super Bowl game of life. I'm not trying to baby anyone's feelings, but I will never disrespect anyone. And for the people that can't handle like a good, strong coach in order to win, the game is about winning in life, not just personally, but also for our families, the team, the community that we serve and represent. So if those people can't handle that, they don't last long inside our environment, because they just can't handle it. So the people that we do have in our group are all on board, and they're all willing to be held accountable, as we all are. And that's what makes us greater and better. So I don't experience that, but I think it's because of the structure of the culture of what we expect in our group as a group member. That's why I don't have this sensitivity or ego or whatever that may be a long-term problem.
Exactly. I think that you clean away the ego by saying, and I love this, the Super Bowl of life. We are in this game together, no room for anything but getting the game done. And as a result of doing that, you refocus people away from their own personal ego, what they want, how they feel, to focus on the bigger piece, the bigger picture. And I think that's a great lesson, not only when leading men, but also women, people. That's how we work. Awesome. Thank you so much for that. Spring, over to you.
Yeah, I would agree with Elena. I think it does come down to respect. I honestly haven't had any issues either. I think it also starts with us of how we view it as well, right? Like I view that a lot of my opportunities in life have come because I am a woman, which we wouldn't be on this webinar or masterclass if we weren't, right? And a lot of the opportunities I've had have come from men giving me the opportunity. And so I'm very respectful of it. In terms of leading, every single one of my leaders in my company are men. And I think it's all about how I show up as well. Like I show up with respect to them, they respect me. It's about the clear vision of where we're going, the common goal. And it really has nothing to do with what I'm a male or if they're a male or if I'm a female. It really is the bigger picture to what Elena said. So I have never had an issue with it in any capacity, but I think a lot of it comes down to, I don't expect to have an issue with it. Like I expect that it's normal and we're doing business and it doesn't matter if it's a male or a female.
Awesome. And that's great advice. Just neutralize it by focusing on, again, the bigger picture, the larger goals, same expectations for everybody.
Yes.
Well said. We're moving on to the next question. We're going to keep with the theme of leadership. And in fact, I see one of my favorite leaders here, which is Chris Heller. He's been an amazing mentor of mine, and that name probably rings a bell for many of you. And he knows, and he's going to understand where this question comes from, because this is a very self-serving question. And the question will be for, I'm going to focus on Nikki and Kathleen, and then Michelle, you'll be the next question after that. So how do you balance getting the point done, being powerful without hurting, and balancing that with the desire to be liked? Like a lot of women, we do have that desire to be liked. So how do you balance, again, making sure that you get the point across, that you do lead, and sometimes, Elena, to your point, you have to lead with authority, right? And how is it that you balance against the concern of hurting people's feelings or upsetting them? Nikki, we'll start with you, then Kathleen, you're next.
I think this has been an evolution for me. I think if you had asked me this 5 years ago, I would have said that I was looking to strike a balance. And now at this phase of my career and running my business, I'm just pretty clear that the way I lead is very clear for my people. I'm crystal clear on where we're going. I'm crystal clear on what our standards are. And if me asking you to abide by those standards infringes upon your liking of me, then we're just not the right fit. Like it's okay if you don't like me, but you don't get to stay here. You can go and be average somewhere else. You can't do that inside my organization. So I'm unwilling to risk the health of my organization or the success of the people that I've made promises to provide an opportunity for them over my ego, because frankly, being liked, that's really all that it is. And so I think for me, the closer I get to my truth and who I am and what I feel is right and what I feel is authentic to my organization, the less I care whether someone doesn't like me or not, because ultimately then I'm being guided by their compass, which is just very quickly going to, point me north into their direction, into a place that I probably don't want to be, because they don't like me by way of their standards. I like me by way of my standards. And that's really all that matters to me.
Yeah, a big theme there is like, know who you are, like who you are, fall in love with yourself first, and then be okay if someone decides that they don't want to follow that. Another key point is if you don't follow who you are, you're going to follow somebody else in a direction you don't want to go. Great point, Nikki. Kathleen, over to you.
Yeah, I agree. And Nikki, I relate so much. If you asked me this question when I was 22, I'd probably say a completely different answer. But, a client once said something to me that I think was quite profound and wise. And she said, I don't have a problem if you don't like me. That's okay. However, I have garnered respect. And it always stuck with me. Like, I'm okay if people don't like me, if I've done something that's, disrespectful or that's negative or that's lacking in empathy or vulnerability, or even for me, transparency, that I have issue with. And I find for me, I'm committed to my purpose in life and I want to truly be of service. And I have a personal belief that, if I'm dishonest or I'm manipulative or I do something, in vain or I'm envious, that I'm actually hurting myself more than others. And this might sound like a weird way to answer the question, but because I frame it that way to myself, I deeply trust myself. It's like, I know what I'm doing is in alignment with my values and I know why I'm doing it and I know where I'm trying to go and who I'm trying to serve. And that's to me 1,000,000 times more important than likability, because this is a world of mirrors, right? And the minute you step out with confidence, you're mirroring to somebody else that they're not stepping out with confidence. And that's not my journey. I can't stay back to try to help others go forward. I go forward to help those who are willing to step forward with me, do it with greater ease, just as other women have done for me ahead of me. So I don't worry about the likability. I don't worry at all. I just try to constantly realign. Nobody's always aligned, right? Constantly realign and make sure I respect myself. And as long as I respect myself, I'm good to carry on with my mission personally.
The key piece there, and everyone, panelists, all of you, please take a look at the chat. The feedback we're getting is amazing. generally, like Kathleen, what I'm getting from it is, first of all, make sure you come from a good place, right? And that's really, really important. And then the other piece, and I like this, is we're in a world of mirrors. And this is especially true, given that we have so much social media around us. I'm sure that all of you, given your presence and your social media presence, I'm sure all of you will have someone that will say something negative, right? And understanding it's only because of the success that you have that they feel that way, and not internalizing that. Very good. Very well said on that piece too. Kathleen, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, it's interesting. Like, I've never really had somebody ever accuse me of like kicking them or trying to climb up in front of them until I walked forward and then they jumped in front of me. Right. So it's like, once you're taking action, then it's like, oh, but it's never truly the case. It's an illusion, right?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much, Kathleen. Now this question is for Michelle. Michelle, you have been waiting quietly, patiently, and I want to make sure that we get this answer from you. And I think this question is actually extremely important. What we do when we are younger to get to where we are today doesn't work as we get into positions of leadership. For example, in simple place, the legal realm. In the legal realm, when you're a junior, you are a note taker. You don't not give orders, and you do not represent people, essentially. As you move up, you then become the order giver. You don't take the notes, and you're no longer an order taker, as that sets your career back. So it's this: what got you so far here won't get you there. So Michelle, how would you, or what advice would you give to your younger self versus older self? And if that doesn't make sense, how did you navigate the world in your career, or rather your career with your younger self versus your older self? I bungled that one up. Hopefully it made sense to you.
Yeah. Oh, it totally made sense. And that's a pretty powerful question. So I guess the best way for me to answer that would be, the advice I would give to my younger self would be to give yourself permission. When I look back at where I was when I started, I knew I had the strengths. I knew I had the skills. I didn't have the confidence. And I was constantly looking for the permission to stand out, or the permission to be front and center. And so my personality style is, let's just retreat and be a supporter. And so I spent a lot of years in the background, helping other people shine, doing the work, but really inside wanting to have that validation, wanting to have that acknowledgement, wanting to be recognized for the work that I put in, but I didn't give myself the permission. And I think, we can tear these things apart in so many different ways. Standing where I am today, being able to look back, obviously hindsight is always so much clearer. But I think it really comes down to, when you start out in anything, there is an element of earned respect. You have to put in the work. You have to learn and grow. You have to be able to take on tasks that maybe aren't up here yet. But in order for us to kind of move ourselves up to where we see ourselves, to where we're a best fit and where we can serve people, I really do believe a lot of that comes from us starting out with ourselves. Being able to give ourselves the permission to say, you can do this, not waiting for other people to open the door. You open the door. Earlier comments, not waiting for somebody to pick you. You raise your hand and say, hey, I can do this. I want to do this. Give me a try at it. So for me, my journey in terms of the power structures, or being able to really kind of step into that, has really been around twofold. It's one, earning the respect. I truly believe that I'm not somebody that wants to step into a role and expect that people are going to respect me. I've had leaders ahead of me who, because they hold the role and title, automatically want that respect and acknowledgement. And I do believe, whether that's traditional side of me or not, that there is an element of earned respect, that you do have to do the work and put in the time and be able to have the results to show for it. So I think it's twofold. I think it's one, being able to earn the respect, earn the position, do what needs to happen, have happen for you to get to where you want to go. And the second piece to that is give yourself permission, because you deserve to be in all the same rooms as other people if you allow yourself to be.
Thank you, Michelle. And one thing, when I was younger, I'd say, no, I don't know, I'm not good enough for that, and I shouldn't put my hand up. And my grandmother would always say, why not you? Why not you? And asking yourself, well, why not me, will sometimes prompt you to actually put up your hand.
So much easier when you can say, if it's not about me, what would I do?
Yeah.
And that's a really great sort of guiding principle.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Michelle. So this one was rated the top question to ask, believe it or not. And I thought we've talked about this next topic exhaustively, but I think it continues to come up. And this question is for everybody. And I'll start with you, Spring. Imposter syndrome. Have you ever had it? And if you have, what did you do? If you haven't, how do you make sure that you don't feel like an imposter? Spring, go ahead.
Oh, yes, I've definitely had it, and I still do. I still have things come up that I'm like, oh my gosh, can I do that? Right. And even a couple of days ago, you guys, I had an opportunity and I was like, no way. The reality of it is every time that comes up, I just think about, why not me? Just to your point that you said, like, why not me? Why can't I do that? The only thing that's holding me back is myself. And I always also say to myself, I'll take a step back and look at it from a third party. And I think, well, at least I'm getting in the arena. And the only reason we have imposter syndrome is because we feel like we're being judged by other people. And so for me, I'm like, I'll always take a step back and say, at least I'm putting myself in the arena. And if somebody's going to judge me, if I'm going to quote unquote fail, at least I'm the one who tried and put myself out there. So every time I feel it, that's exactly what happens. I'm like, okay, I'm going to go for it and release expectations, and we'll see how it plays out.
It's giving yourself permission to fail.
Mm-hmm.
It's, I think, like a key thing that you're saying. Is that fair to say?
Yeah. And I don't even believe it is failure because I'm at least trying.
At least
So
trying.
I don't even believe in myself of failing. Like, I have a lot of things going on right now. Failure is only in the eye of what expectation you're putting out there. So maybe I want to have an event that I have 1,000 people show up, but I have 500. Well, nobody knew I wanted 1,000 people. I have 500. So I just look at it as like, you've got to go out there, you've got to try, release expectations, do your best. And at least you're putting yourself out there, because there's a lot of people that aren't, and you're just moving one step forward to your goals.
Thank you so much, Spring.
Mm-hmm.
Elena, over to you. Oh, I believe we got you on mute still.
Thank you. Yes, as you know, as Spring said, I think a lot of us, I don't want to speak for anybody else, but yeah, for myself, certainly I felt like, wow, I have this expectation that I'm supposed to feel a certain way or always feel confident or know what I'm doing. And somehow, because I have insecurities or whatever, that labels inside my head that I must be an imposter. But I really analyze this because you're right, this does come up a lot. And so I realized, look, pretty much as a generality, we all feel the same way. And then I looked at it even further, and what is that exactly? Like, if you're an imposter, you're posing as something that isn't actually to be, right? Like, if you're claiming that you're some self-expert in an area and you're not, you're actually a fraud, right? But there's nothing wrong with claiming something and saying, this is where I'm at. I'm a brand new realtor. I've only been a realtor for 2 years, but I'm not an imposter. I'm learning, I'm self-educating, I'm surrounding myself by the right people. I'm guiding people. I'm not pretending to be something that I'm not. However, I'm not stopping what I'm want to do based on my own insecurities. You know what I'm saying? So I feel this imposter thing is like, look, you take a gold medalist, an athlete, even the professionals are going to doubt themselves or hit a plateau. You're constantly trying to become better than where you're at. So you're always going to feel in this situation in life that you're not there yet or where you want to be. But that doesn't discredit how much time and energy you've already put in. Like, you're constantly gonna evolve. So give yourself permission to evolve. And just know that other people are experiencing their own insecurities. But if you just continue to, have courage in the face of fear to keep putting that next foot forward, you're not an imposter. You're just experiencing the growth of what it means to expand yourself in that role.
Well said. Very well said. I remember reading a study some time ago in which women are more often to not apply for a job because it's a stretch versus men. And I don't know if that still holds true. But what I love about what you said is, wait a second, take a step back. You're not supposed to, like, first of all, we're not pretending that we are something that we are absolutely not. Like, I'm an accountant, let me do your taxes for you. I'm not fraud, right? So we have to like break apart this notion of imposter syndrome from like actual real fraud, right? So number one. And then number two, make sure that first of all, acknowledge other people feel the same way and understand that you're stretching yourself. And that's just part of what it feels like to stretch yourself. And like I said earlier, many men apply for that role, and that's expected. It's expected for you to be stretching yourself in a role that you don't have all of the skill sets. Otherwise, how do you grow into that role? It doesn't make sense. You always stay here. Thank you so much. Awesome.
Yeah.
Kathleen, you're next. Then Nikki and Michelle.
Yeah, I mean, I love this so much. And I want to take a bit of a, in high performance, we think the opposite is like laziness or apathy, and it's not. The opposite of high performance is toxicity. It's enablement. And we're in a culture or an industry where there is toxicity. I mean, there are imposters, there's pretenders, and then there's performers. And
Right.
I think we need to think about this for a second. The pretenders that are operating in toxicity, they aren't suffering from imposter syndrome. They aren't worrying, do I have enough? Imposters don't think about, am I credible enough? They're just showing up with entitlement. And it's really important to identify this, right? Actions not matching words, which is something as leaders we always need to look for. But the highest performance leaders, they leverage imposter syndrome to their advantage. I'm thankful that I have personal inventory that I say, could I do better? Could I learn more? Do I have the skills and the equipment? The market has shifted. Am I humble enough to educate myself at a higher level? Thank goodness I have that personal inventory to see those gaps and keep getting better. I think the problem is when we don't give ourselves enough regard for the skills that we do have in relation to the gaps that we need to fill. But I don't know where I'd be, let alone any leader I've ever worked with, without imposter syndrome. I think it's a very, very healthy aspect that we have to our personas that really helps us grow. And without it, I think leadership might be a scary place, to be honest.
So I like that switch. It's like lean into the feeling and leverage it, right? Kind of like lean into that fear and, do it anyway. Like lean into the feeling and let that be a leading indicator as to how you can improve. Awesome.
Yeah. And well, for sure. Like, I think when we're starting out, like it never goes away. When I first started coaching, I look back now, I'm like, what did I know? Why did anyone pay me? Meanwhile, we had great results, but now I still feel that way. What else do I need to know? And I mean, that gap just keeps propelling us. But I think it's good to know, like, if we didn't have it, I'd be worried. I'm worried when I don't have it. When I have it, I'm thankful.
Again, to your point, in this world in which everyone is constantly evolving their careers, everyone is constantly evolving the brand, doing something next, you have to evolve. And having that sense of imposter syndrome can help you be nimble in a way, and continue to learn and continue to do better. Nikki, over to you.
I mean, to everyone's point, I'm right on track with that I always say, like, before I was just speaking at a really large event. There was about 8,000 people there. And before we got out on stage, somebody backstage was like, are you nervous right now? Like, do you get nervous still before you go and do this? And I always say I am nervous, not in the sense that I'm nervous to go and speak in front of everyone, but I'm nervous in the sense that I have an obligation, if everyone chose to spend their time here today, for this hour keynote that I have, that I deliver. Right. And so some might call that imposter syndrome, but from my perspective, we're always an imposter of something that we have never done before. So theoretically, we will constantly be an imposter if we are evolving our lives, right? If we are continuing to push forward, if we are continuing to push the boundaries of what we're capable of. And I found that the more I got into rooms with high achievers, I realized exactly what everyone has said, that like, we all feel this. Nobody really knows what they're doing. We're sort of all making this up as we go, right? And we're all figuring it out as we go. And so I made a decision, to Spring's point earlier about failure, right? A lot of times I think we get imposter syndrome around failure, right? Like that, whether we failed at something or whether we're actually succeeding. And I made a decision a long time ago that I could never fail. Like, failure just wasn't an option for me, in the sense that the only way I describe failure is if I quit, or if I never really find out what I'm capable of. Otherwise, I'm just in the middle of succeeding, because success has a whole lot to do with when we time the outcome. Like, if you time my business right now to what I envision it being 5 years from now, sure, I'm absolutely failing in comparison with where I will be then, but I'm not going to quit. So in my world, I absolutely can't fail. So I think this is how we define it too. And to everybody's point, if we can lean into the growth, if we can lean into the evolution, then that imposter syndrome starts to quiet, because we realize that it's just part of how we become who we want to become.
Nikki, that's great. I love the idea of like a mental hack would be extend the timeline. Like you think you got to be here right now, you don't. Extend the timeline out and understand that the process to get there, that famous iceberg, have you seen that, is a bunch of chaos before you get to that particular piece, that particular outcome. Great. Awesome. Thank you so much, Nikki. Michelle, I saw you kind of laughing and like nodding your head. I'm so curious. What were you thinking?
I resonated with everything every one of these women have shared. And it's interesting. So when I started with my intro, you kind of picked up on the imposter syndrome. It's definitely something that I have battled and was challenged by for most of my life. And I've spent many years really kind of diving in and dissecting it and why. And the reality is this: I was being an imposter because me coming into the business, trying to be like somebody else that I thought was this ideal image, pretending to be that I had these strengths. Like I'm the first to say now, and I'm quite happy to say it, don't talk to me about numbers. I'm not the numbers person. You want to know creativity. You want me to listen and be able to respond. I can do that with power and passion, but numbers, okay, I can do it. I'm just laughing, joking, but
Of course.
But do I want to? Is that really where my strengths are? Is that where my blueprint is? And so for me, being able to really overcome the imposter syndrome and recognizing that it really doesn't ever go away, to all these other women's points, being able to navigate it and manage it really centered around me getting clear on who am I? It's great, if we sit here and we say, well, what is this identity of success? Like who comes to mind? For me, for the longest time, it was always somebody who was very assertive and tough and unemotional and, could make very clear, logical decisions. And here I am, emotional. I like relationships. I want to connect with people. I need to understand a deeper level. And so there was a huge gap between who I was and who I thought I needed to be. And in my experience, the larger the gap, the greater those feelings of imposter syndrome. And so for me to be able to close that gap for myself, it really had to come down to who am I and how can I leverage that? And how do I use that as a strength in my business? How do I show up as the best version of me as opposed to trying to chase a version that isn't like me? And so, it kind of sums up everything that everybody has shared. It doesn't go away. It's always going to be there. It's a response to fear. Fear is not always a bad thing. It's putting yourselves in new situations, pushing yourself out of your comfort zone. But for me, it really came down to recognizing where am I not aligned with who I am and what I want and what I value and how I can show up and serve people, because that's going to look very different than somebody else might.
And I think when we're younger, that's what we want to do. We want to fit in. We want to be like everybody else. We want to emulate those that we think are the pinnacle of success. And in doing so, we get lost. And then we reinforce the sensation of being a fraud in that particular circumstance. I think there's a great saying, be yourself, everybody else is taken.
Exactly.
And that's something to remember for all of us. Thank you, Michelle. We are getting close on time. I can't believe it. This was I could go for hours. And everyone else is like, please don't. But I won't do that. I'd love to turn it over to our audience questions. We do have 3, and some of my questions even overlap with these. So this question will be open to everybody, and hopefully we can get to all of them. I'll do the same order, starting with Spring. The first question is, woman to woman, how to balance it all. Oftentimes, the busier I am, the more my partner needs me or wants my attention. I time block and he's very supportive, but the irony baffles me. And I feel like I'm letting him or others down. And I think others could also include maybe parents, maybe it's those that, your children. Spring, you start. I think you did mention you want to be stay at home. And how do you do that?
Yeah. So there's a couple of things. I really stopped thinking about balance and I think about harmony. And I just say that because usually if something is great over here, it's suffering over here a little bit. So I don't believe in having balance all the time, is having the harmony. Now, to your question about maybe your spouse or others, I think it comes down to having real conversations around it. So in my personal life, I'm very highly leveraged. We have people who clean, cook, do all those different things, because at the end of the day, my husband doesn't care who does the laundry or who cooks the meals or who cleans the house. So for me, it was more or less, how can I leverage out the things that don't necessarily need to be me, that I can, when I'm home, spend my time with him or the family or doing the things that I want. So I would just say in this, to this question, is just getting really clear around like, what is that expectation that make you both fulfilled? And then you don't necessarily have to do it all. So figure out where you could get some leverage if you can. And then I think just being really okay to know that usually sometimes when something's great, the other might be lacking, and that's okay. Like I've just come to accept that not everything's going to be at 100% all the time. And it's created a lot of more of fulfillment, and also me putting less pressure on myself when I started feeling that way.
Thank you so much, Spring. Elena, over to you.
Yeah, I love what Spring said. I operate the same way. I stopped comparing myself, and the idea of the concept of the work-life balance to me always put me at this disadvantage of where I thought everything had to be perfect and I had to feel happy about everything, and I don't have a lot of motion and random stuff coming at me. And one day I said, you know what? If you want that, I'm not your gal. Like, I don't know how to do humana, you know, like life is perfect. I just know how to do my life. And what and I like a lot of motion. I'm up to big things on this planet, you know? So part of what I've done is also delegating the role so that I do have time for the family and the work partners. And I put my family as my family and then my global family, right? And so what I've done is I've really had a time to indoctrinate sort of the kids and the husband as who are we as Team Cardone? We want to help people. We want to make a difference. So from the time the kids were really young, I said, hey, you want to be superheroes? Your parents are superheroes. This is how we help people. Do you want to contribute? Yay. Okay, I want to be a superhero too. Okay, well, one of the reasons and one of the ways that you can contribute to the family is when you allow me to be here on a Zoom or whatnot, you're actually helping the people that were on this call. If they heard something that could change their life just a little bit and they got help from us, you actually help them indirectly by being okay when I'm not there. So then they understood this is our mission. So now it wasn't always like, you're leaving me, let me vie for this attention to pull and distract you because I need to prove that I can have you whenever I want you, you know. And now as the kids have gotten older, they see their point and where their role is in the relationship of how do we help as a group. So it's made it a lot easier for them to recognize when is mom and papa helping other people, and when do I need to step aside to allow that, and in that sense I'm contributing, or when is it time and I have to look at that and say, when am I neglecting my family because I'm spending too much time at work, you know, and then my work might have to take a hit, but hopefully not if I've done my job properly like Spring does, right? If I've hired enough people to fill in for me in that role when I can't be there, it allows me to focus on my family. And then again, family always comes first, but not every time, not when it's not an emergency. So if my kids want my time because they're bored, then I have to have done a good job with putting somebody in the role that can artfully take them away and get them busy on a project when they don't really need me, but they just wanted me because they were bored. So that's how I've been able to do it. And I'm a master juggler, not a balancing act as well, like Spring, you know, I'm a juggler. Whatever is the ball that needs to be caught, that's the one that gets my attention full. And then it's sometimes family, sometimes business, but whatever it is, that's how I do it. And I don't compare myself to this expectation of this perfect life.
I like that. And what I'm hearing is a couple things: prioritization, know what to prioritize when, and be clear on that. Like, what's a real emergency versus, like you said, the kids are bored. Is that really an emergency? You know, are they going to get more value out of me paying attention to them right now? And where's my highest and best use, to use a real estate term? And again, Spring, outsourcing, super important. The things that don't really need you for your magical personal touch, get it off your plate. I love that. Awesome. Thank you so much. Kathleen, you are next.
I mean, I like Spring. I don't believe in balance. I don't believe it exists. I don't think it's attainable. It's like being normal. Who are these normal people? I've never met them. I don't know who they are. I'm certainly not one. But you know, I think when we get powerful women together, the conversation changes. And I truly still believe women are our largest untapped resource in this industry, because you know, we're doing more. Like, we know statistically outside of our career, we're doing 3 times more work. And that's not just childcare and, you know, cooking and going to the school. That's managing, caring for elderly loved ones, caring for people who are sick, doing community work. We're doing so much more outside of our careers. Then we're stepping in our careers. And here's the hard part that drives me to do what I do every single day. We're getting less help. In fact, we're getting half the help. We're hiring help as entrepreneurs at half the rate of our male counterparts. And then we're going, how can we not keep up? Why is it so hard? So for me, I mean, you know, I relate to Elena. There are times my children did sit in the office because they had a headache and I was training and I couldn't go pick them up right at that moment. It was not an emergency. They were okay. And I think they've learned resilience from it. And I think it's important for children to learn, you know, contribution and how to come together as a family. And I relate to that so much, but I think we're not hearing these kind of conversations enough. And I think other women need to hear that and go, oh, wait, it's okay. Because when I was first in real estate and I had young kids, there was so much judgment. And I can't tell you how freeing it was to realize the same people who are judging me and telling my kids that I should be doing this, that, and the other for working so hard were the same people who would judge me if I was on social services or welfare or whatever it's called for you. So I chart my own course on my terms, my way, and I trust that. And I think it's a message, like, I think it's a freedom all women deserve to have. And it's going to allow us to contribute more, not just in business, but as mothers, as partners, you know, as contributors to our community and our world, for sure.
Thank you, Kathleen. I like that. They're going to judge you no matter what, right? Back to the imposter syndrome, back to hurting people's feelings. They're going to judge you no matter what. You got to do what's right.
Mhm.
Nikki, go ahead.
I mean, I don't even like the word balance because it implies that everything matters equally. And
I don't think any of you panelists like that word, and I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, it's probably the number one question all of us get asked. Like, I think it's if I'm on a women's panel, the number one question I get asked is, how do you do it all? My answer is I don't, right? I just don't do it all. Because balance implies that everything matters equally, and it just doesn't. And so I think that we have to be clear on what matters to us. And we also have to make sure that we're spending our time. I always say, I am always wherever my feet are. And that allows me to be really effective in the time that I have. So what I mean by that is that when I walk into the office, I'm in the office, I am working, and I am completely focused on what I am there to do. Because if I'm partially distracted by, you know, looking at texts from my family or scrolling social media or checking in on my daughter, then I'm failing at both things. I'm failing at being a leader because I'm not doing that job all the way. And I'm also failing at being a mom because somebody else is watching her. So ultimately I'm just failing at multiple things, and I'd rather fail phenomenally at one thing at a time. So if I'm going to fail at being a mom, I'm going to do it really well. Like, I'm going to completely shut that out so I can be as effective as I can while I'm here. And then when I go home, I'm home at the latest by 5 every day. And my phone shuts off until after I put my daughter to bed. We have at least 3 hours where we eat dinner together. I get her ready for bed and I focus entirely on her. I'm not on my phone. It's away. My team can't get a hold of me. My attention is 100% on her, 100% on my husband, 100% on my family. And then maybe after I put her to bed, I'll get back on emails or something like that, right? It's about doing what matters most in the moment that I'm in when it matters, right? So, and I also think, to everybody else's point, it's really about bringing our families on the journey with us, right? I think sometimes as leaders, we are tempted to sort of hide the hard, right? Like, we don't want anyone to know that we're having a hard time, or we don't want anyone to know that this is challenging. I have conversations with my family about what's happening in my business. And I have conversations with my 2.5-year-old. She doesn't have a clue what I mean, but I'll continue to have conversations with her as she grows, right? This is what mommy is doing. This is what mommy is trying to build. This is the impact that mommy is trying to make. And this is how mommy is growing as a human being, because our kids don't listen to what we tell them. They listen to what we show them. And my responsibility as a mom is to be a model for her, to show her what is possible in this life if she chooses to apply herself. So that's really my focus around, around my parenting journey, but also how I interact with my business and everything else. It doesn't all matter equally. And to Spring's point, it's always about being in harmony with all of the things.
Yeah, again, the word balance, I think that that's something that many of us have said, forget it, right? And it's what's so wonderful about today is that we now admit it, right? How difficult it is to be a mom, how we don't always balance, how there are times when we prioritize. That used to be something that was so taboo to say out loud. And I think it's so liberating for women for us to sit here and say, no, I don't balance. Like, this is how I do it. Laser focus here, get the family to understand the goals that you're aiming for so that we are all, again, rowing in one direction, heading towards the same finish line.
Can I just say something, like, just really fast?
Yeah.
I also think that believing this lie is a really fast way to never find out what you're actually capable of. Like, if I wanted to convince a whole group of people to not fulfill their potential, I would convince them to be perfect, because it's an unattainable goal, right? It's literally not possible. So they would beat themselves up and never move forward because they would be convinced that something was wrong with them because they couldn't do everything perfectly. Like, that's how I would keep someone from fulfilling their potential. So next time you think that that's who you have to be or what you have to do, just remind yourself that it's literally the blockade to fulfilling who you were born to be.
It's actually, and that whole principle about perfection, if you tell your children they have to be perfect, you're so wonderful, there actually are studies that show that they don't excel.
It's the lowest possible standard because they can't achieve it.
Yes. Thank you, Nikki. Michelle, over to you.
My gosh, what is there left unsaid? I reiterate everything that these women have shared. I think, I'll do my best to summarize it. How's that? I think, we've all agreed that balance is non-existence. And I think balance can easily be equated to perfection. And the minute you are striving for perfection is the moment you are literally closing the door on your potential and what's possible and your dreams. And I think the only thing I can share is, once upon a time when I had my kids were very young, that's exactly what I strived for, was to be the best in everything, the best mom, the best partner, the best business person, until I call it the what's for dinner scenario. And I sat there in my kitchen trying to manage the dinner prep and the homework and the emails. And my husband walked in and lovingly said, "What's for dinner?" And I crumbled to the floor, because it was in that moment that it was like, it was my doing. It was, I could do this, I'll do this, and not asking for help and not allowing myself to bend into the fact that there is no such thing as perfection. You cannot have everything equal all the time. We are not robots. We can't do that. We are humans, and we can only respond to what's in front of us. And I think that's the gentlest, most kindest way of being able to navigate yourself in life and in business, is to really accept that it is hard. It's not easy to have all of these facets of our life and be ambitious and strong women. That, everything is possible, but maybe not all at the same time. And so I think when it comes to prioritizing, or the time management, the work-life balance, I think it really comes down to prioritizing. And it's really recognizing what is important. We can't be everything all at the same time to everybody. So you can be a good mom. You can be a great, successful business person. You can be a wonderful partner. You can have ambitions and dreams, but there has to be a priority sequence. And first and foremost, it has to be you at the front of that. Being able to acknowledge, what am I capable of? What am I willing to sacrifice on in order to get this? And really just being kind. And I think if I can leave anybody with anything, it's to understand that, none of us got here alone. And yes, we don't talk about these things often. As much as we talk about them often, we don't talk about them enough. And I think that the more that we can do forums like this, the more that we can get together and share and just let somebody else hear, hey, you're not the only one that had a meltdown in your kitchen while your kids are writing on crayon on your wall, right? Like, you're not alone in that. And I think just that alone will help people volumes in being able to just manage and navigate everything that they want.
With that said, the last comments from all of you were so not only inspiring, but touching as well. There's nothing more that we could possibly say today. And good news is that we're at time as well. Thank you all for your attention today. I really hope we do a round two. I feel like we're just like scratching the surface as far as wisdom here. It has been a pleasure to not only have everyone's attention, but also to have all of you panelists here together. I would be remiss to say, or not to acknowledge Patty, Julie Franklin, and Jenna Houston as well for their hard work in getting this together. Thank you so much to you and the Ojo team. Look out for your emails. There'll be a lot more information about Spring, Elena, Kathleen, Nikki, Michelle as well, and some tips and tricks that we've gleaned from this conversation. So check those emails. Make sure to follow our lovely leaders here today. Have a wonderful rest of your Wednesday. Thank you so much.
Bye,
Thank you.
everyone.